Welcome to the Digital Enterprise Society podcast, addressing all aspects of the digital enterprise, inspiring connection without boundaries and creation without limits. Thank you for tuning in. Here are your hosts, Thom Singer and Craig Brown.
Well, hello, and welcome back to the Digital Enterprise Society podcast. Thank you so much for coming along on the journey of this show that is designed to be a resource for those who work in and around PLM. The Digital Enterprise Society, it is a forum for the exchange of ideas surrounding the tools, processes, and practices used across the product lifecycle. To learn more, visit digitalenterprisesociety.org. My name is Thom Singer, and I have the honor to co-host this show, usually with Craig Brown, who is an industry veteran and former PLM leader from General Motors. Although today, Craig isn't with me, it's just me, and we are going to be talking about careers and career changes, and how do you go about looking for a job in this crazy world that we're in right now? Because every single week, we try to bring to this podcast really interesting interviews and other ideas that are going to help all of our listeners enhance and grow their careers. And today is no different. Today, I am joined by Jan-Bart Smits, and he is the global practice leader for Stanton Chase. They are an executive search firm, and he is the global practice leader for technology and professional services. And he spends his life helping place senior executives into companies in the world of technology. And so he has seen a lot, especially over the last 4 months as the world's been turned upside down. So Jan-Bart, welcome to the Digital Enterprise Society podcast.
Thanks, Thom. Pleased to be here.
Oh, glad to have you. So a little full disclosure to everybody who listens. I now work as a director for Stanton Chase. I've joined their company. So I wanted to make sure I told everybody that because I like to be really upfront about everything. But I am really impressed with what they do and how they do it. And so Jan-Bart, can you tell us a little bit about your background? How did you get into executive search? And then we'll talk about this crazy world we live in today.
Okay, well, it's a long story. Basically, I've been in search for all my career. I'm an astrophysicist by training, so I went to university. Then, as I'm from the Netherlands, I had to do my military service, which is obligatory. And then I started looking for a job. And in that process, I spoke to search and selection firms. And I thought, geez, what these guys are doing is fun. Let's turn it around and let's apply with those firms. And that happened. And basically, I really enjoyed it. Maybe that's the reason why I was successful. And I never left it.
So how many years have you been in this field now?
I guess about 30.
Wow. So
a little bit less.
So one of your focuses is with technology. And
yes.
So what are some of the things that when you're looking to help technology firms place senior executives, what are some of the important things that technology firms look for?
Well, a number of things. First of all, obviously, the ability to fit in the culture of a technology company. And that's a no-brainer because that's the same for every other industry. But what I do find in technology is that the speed in which things happen is vastly different from a technology company than many other organizations. And so that is really important. Somebody who is quickly adaptable, can change, but also is willing to work hard where necessary and just make a lot of waves and make them fast. That's something you see in the technology space a lot.
So you spend a lot of your time placing those people at the C level and at the director and VP level. But a lot of people who listen to the show, that they're sort of earlier in their careers. They maybe haven't reached that level. So let's just start off with some basic advice for people who work in and around any type of technology, but in this case, the world of product lifecycle management. What are some things people should be doing early in their career to position themselves for higher levels down the line?
I think it's important that anyone who is working in a technology company develops sort of a T profile. And with what I mean with that is obviously you have your specialism, and that can be technical, that can be commercial, that can be whatever. But it's always very important to have a broad overview of what you're actually, as an organization, trying to achieve. It's important that you. The most important thing in developing a career is being really good at communications. And to do that, you need to be able to understand where the other person you're dealing with is coming from. So it might well be that and this is a very standard example, that you are the best programmer in the world, and that you can make the most successful program that's there. But if it doesn't solve the problem that somebody in finance is dealing with, then it's not really useful. So you need to be able to understand where other people are coming from to be able to work with them. And I see that, for example, that in the modern days of software development with agile working, you see that you do short sprints and then go back to your clients or your stakeholders to talk about, hey guys, what do you need? And people who are able to do that, who naturally have that communication skill and make sure that they are aligned and plugged in with the people they deal with, they tend to be very successful because they are able to bring groups together and get the goals achieved quickly and successfully.
So in the last few months, we've worldwide gone through kind of this weird situation. Everybody kind of got sent to work from home, and a lot of basic functions seem to have clamped down, but that hasn't necessarily stopped the need for companies to hire. So what are you seeing out there in the world, both at maybe the more junior level, but also at the senior level, as far as companies moving forward, making strategic hires?
Strategic hires are still done, but it really must be a strategic hire. So whilst you say it hasn't stopped the need to hire, it has lessened the need to hire, very much so. So what you see is that when I look at the sort of the periods that the phases of going through the COVID situation is, the first one was obviously the lockdown. So every organization was busy. Okay, how do we make sure people can work from home rather than come into the office? And that was initially technical solutions, but then also how do you deal with each other? So how do you work as a team when you can't see each other? How do you make sure communication is still there? As everybody knows, I guess, is that when you communicate, 80% of what you're saying doesn't come out of your mouth. So when you meet with people, you pick up a lot of signals that you don't hear. Is somebody shifting in their chair because they don't feel comfortable with the message you're getting across? And that's became a lot less. So also working in getting the teams work well together, that was really important technically and in the first month. Then it was, okay, let's sort out the cracks. Yeah, we had it sort of basically in order in the first month, second month. Let's make sure that it actually starts optimized, that all the processes are working, everything's going well, et cetera, et cetera. And you see there that what's going well are the standard processes. Okay, guys, we have a project to do. This is where we need to go. Let's go and fix. And that tends to work, yeah, where it's fairly clear what people need to do. What was much more difficult is creative processes and processes where you're sort of throwing the ball around. Where do we go? What do we need to do? Where you are sort of going to and fro in discussions and thinking processes, etc. That was much more difficult for people. And the third one now is, okay, how do we go back to the future? And in that time of the first 2 months, people were not really concerned with hiring. Okay, the critical hires went through, and none of my assignments was stopped because of COVID. But there is a significant decrease in new work because people were let's do it with the existing organization. What you see changing now, when the initial with all due respect, the layoffs have been done, the emergency measures have been taken. We're now preparing for the next step. Is there going to be a second wave or not? But anyway, scenario planning, how does the organization going to look like? And what you see is that the execs are looking at which of the people actually stood up to the plate and who basically got catatonic and froze and didn't know what to do anymore. And that is where you see now that organizations are starting to shift things around. Yeah. Who are the execs, who are the leaders, and that can be team leaders up to, very senior leaders, who actually made it happen. And those are the things that are going to be the replacements. Like you said, Stanton Chase works at the senior levels. That means we are more focused on change rather than growth. In the end, a company needs one chief exec and not 5 if it grows. It just needs a different one. Where you can say, okay, we're doing really well, we're expanding, we need 10 more salespeople. So there are differences.
So it's interesting that you bring up the fact, because this is something that I've seen in conversations that I've had across industry lines. You bring up the fact that now executives and leaders are looking at who stepped up to the plate and made things happen during the last, 4 months now, and who got, as you said, catatonic or didn't, and that changes are going to be made. And I think that's true at those higher levels, but I think that's also true at sort of the rank and file levels. So do you think that once we start opening up a little bit more, are there going to be a lot of opportunities along the entire career ladder for people?
I guess so, yes. Yeah, I've heard a lot of situations, I've got a fair amount of situations where people said, okay, we have an exec or an individual who didn't perform well, but who did really well in his team or in her team? Who can we promote? So internal promotions, that is happening a lot at the moment. Shifting around, changing from one company to the other is a little bit more difficult. Like I said earlier, 80% of what you're saying doesn't come out of your mouth. So hiring people you have actually never physically met, or accepting a job with a boss you have never physically met, that is a hurdle. That is a mental hurdle for people to step over with. And luckily it happens. I've seen it happen, but it requires a lot of thought and work and communication to make sure that are we doing the right thing. And I see companies struggling with that. I've had a discussion with the CEO recently who said, well, initially we were interviewing people over video conferencing, and then we just brought them in now that things are opening up and we can sort of distant meet, but still in the same room. We are bringing them in, and it's often a disappointment because we were very light in our VC interviewing. And I told them, listen, maybe I advised them to do it the exact opposite way. Be extremely serious in your video conferencing, because whatever is going to happen, the world's not going to be the same again. So what's going to happen is that you need to hone the skills of VC and communicating and convincing through a video conferencing situation. So if people can't interview well in a VC situation, you'll also not be able to manage well in a VC situation or communicate well. So it's important that those skills are very well honed and trained and taken care of.
So that's actually a great piece of advice for people at any level along that career path is you had better get good at being able to jump onto Microsoft Teams or Zoom or whatever platform is being used and be able to communicate, not only for just doing your job, but for whatever that next move is. So how can someone fine-tune those skills, both from the company side who needs to be able to do those interviews, but also for the employee or the future employee, the candidate? What can that person do to fine-tune their skills as a video communicator?
That's a really good question, Thom. I think that maybe the first thing is make sure that you know how it works, whatever platform. And maybe it's a personal thing. When I go onto a meeting and the first 5 to 10 minutes are spent, I need to get my thing in order. It doesn't work. There's no sound. Oh, I forgot to unmute, etc., etc., etc. With me, it's well, I get a little bit annoyed, and that's well, I'm not the most patient person in the world, so maybe there's a reason for that. But I think that so that's basically a very basic thing. And then make sure your setup is correct. That when you are looking at a screen, that you're not just seeing only the hairs of your nose or only your forehead. Yeah, it's basic, simple advice, but it's still true. And then look at the people. Don't look at yourself. Look at the person in front of you. Look at the screen and look at the people. Be extra aware of facial changes. Like I said, a lot of the communication is not coming out of your mouth. So look at what people do and be engaged. Don't sit there as a statue. You know, it's try to think of it as a normal conversation. And that's hard to do. I know that, but it's still important. And don't be afraid also to say, listen, can you run this by me again? I didn't quite hear you, or etc. Make sure you're in a quiet room. Well, it's a lot of small things, but make sure that you're comfortable and then try to be yourself.
So how long do you think then it's going to be before hiring gets back to sort of a normal pace? I mean, it sounds like if it's a strategic hire, they're still doing it. But it sounds like from what you're saying, as you go, downstream a little bit, a lot of people are in a wait and see pattern, maybe promoting from within where they can. How long do you think it's going to be before, job changes get back to, sort of normal?
I can't. If I could tell the future, I would, but I can't. So I don't know that. But let me get one thing straight here. Strategic hiring is not only at top level. Strategic hiring is at every single level in the organization. And it depends on what the company is going through. I spoke to one of my clients, which is a telco company, and for them, because of the increase in video conferencing, the increase in electronic communications, they were cracking at the seams. So for them, business continuity was vital. So for them, strategic hires are people who make sure that the network's up and running. Always. For other businesses, it's like everybody who contributes directly to the bottom line. Yeah. So really good salespeople, or everybody who can make a project happen, really make it happen over the phone, over a video conference, and pull that team together. So it's not only the execs, not only the C-suite, it's at every single level where strategic hiring happens.
So a lot of people may not understand, who are listening to this, why a company utilizes someone like Stanton, or utilizes a firm like Stanton Chase. So why do companies go to search firms? Why in the first place are you hired? What value do you provide to companies?
Oh, that's a good question. It depends on the organization. I think that first of all, we provide a objective look at candidates, but also at the company itself. So we can actually look at it not through the pink glasses. We are objective. We have no vested interest in pushing one candidate over the other. We can work confidential. Yeah, sometimes it's a confidential role. People cannot share it for which specific company. Sometimes we have a more global reach. Doing a search is a lot of work. So basically, it's our core business. For a lot of people, it can be a side job they have to do. They don't have the time to do it. Candidates are more open to us. Yeah, we are in the middle, so we can not only at the interviewing process, but also, let's say, for example, in the negotiation process on packages, we can tell a client, listen, the candidate came up with these and these demands or requests. I think it's fair because X, Y, and Z. And we do the same towards the candidates. this is what the client offers, and there's a reason for it, and it's actually fair what they're saying, and the offer is actually a fair and good offer. Yeah, and that's being polite. Sometimes I have to tell a candidate or a client, listen, what you're doing now is that's unacceptable. It's not reasonable anymore. So there's a reality check, and it's always a little bit contentious because your good contract is what I would always call a prenup. You try to work out the kinks in case it goes wrong when you're still in love with each other. So you now can actually do a sensible adult conversation rather than throwing the kitchen sink at each other. And it helps to be in the middle, to keep that relation good, because especially with candidates, it's definitely personal. But sometimes I see that with companies, it's also personal. So we're in between there. Another thing is we know the market. Yeah, so we have an objective view of the market. The only thing I do in my job is talk to people in this specific market. So I know it really well, and I know the difference in culture, et cetera, et cetera. So I can go on and on, but let's not do that. You have only so many minutes.
No. This has been great, and I think that the information that you've shared is going to help a lot of the people who are listening, because I know a lot of people are trying to figure out, what do I do next? Because I think, like I said, the world got turned upside down a little bit. So I think your take on this has been very helpful. So as a last question, what career advice do you have for someone who's listening, regardless of their level? What career advice do you have so that they can be ready to make that move?
It's really difficult to do career advice for a multitude of people at the same time. I tend to do it for one person at a time. Let's do some platitudes, and then let's do some very concrete. Do what you enjoy. Yeah, and that's a platitude, but it's so very true. I spent 40 to 60 hours a week working, sometimes more. And I spent less conscious time with my wife. And that's something I really picked very carefully. So don't do things you don't enjoy. When you want to make a career move, look ahead of where you want to be. Yeah. And pick something that, and look ahead 10 years from now, and pick something that is a stepladder towards that. Pick a role which, when you look ahead 10 years from now and you think, okay, I need these 10 things to hone in my experience. Pick one which has 3 for the next job, and a potential to promotion for the other one, for the other 6 or 7. And promotion is not necessarily up the ladder. Promotion can also be a sideways step. Not everybody needs and wants to be a manager. Just enjoying your job and be really good at what you do is also a promotion. So that when you're networking to get a new job, with all due respect for the jobs we're in, every single search consultant does anything between at the senior levels, you do about 15 assignments a year. So that's about it. And that means that even if you talk to a lot of search consultants, you have an opportunity of very few possible jobs. Most companies hire through networking, still through their own talent acquisition. So make sure that obviously your LinkedIn profile and your digital profile are in order. But when you go networking, and that is something that is very important, I believe, and networking, I mean physical networking, and that's not always possible, but let's say digital networking with people, when you talk to people, the people who are closest to you and who have the same network as you have, they know that you're looking, but they are not able to connect you to somebody new. So when you do networking, go to the people who are at the outer edges of your network, because their circle of people they know is different from yours, and tell them that that you're looking for something new, and tell them that you're interested to make a move. because they can connect you with people you have not seen before, and that opens more possibilities than just your next door neighbor who has sort of the same network.
Awesome. Well, thank you so very much. And thank you for jumping on here and joining us here at the Digital Enterprise Society podcast. If somebody needs to find out more about you, or their company is looking to do some senior level placements and they want to find out more about Stanton Chase, where should they go?
To the website and stantonchase.com. And there you can find me in the Amsterdam office, in the technology practice, and in the professional services practice. Contact details are there. And obviously, all my esteemed colleagues are on that website also.
Now including me as well, because I have joined in the Austin office. So thank you so much again for coming on and sharing with everybody here on the Digital Enterprise Society. And thank you for everybody who tuned in and listened. Hey, join us here every week for more thoughts, ideas, and information in and around product lifecycle management. The Digital Enterprise Society, it is the place for the exchange of ideas around digital manufacturing tools. Check us out at digitalenterprisesociety.org.
You've been listening to the Digital Enterprise Society podcast. Learn more about what you've heard here today at digitalenterprisesociety.org. Join us again next week for more connection without boundaries and creation without limits.